I'm Travis Bader, and this is the Silvercore Podcast. Join me as I discuss matters related to hunting, fishing, and outdoor pursuits with the people and businesses that comprise the community. If you're new to Silvercore, be sure to check out our website, www.silvercore.ca, where you can learn more about courses, services, and products that we offer, as well as how you can join the Silvercore Club, which includes $10 million in North America-wide liability insurance to ensure you are properly covered during your outdoor adventures. This episode is brought to you by Carter Motorsports in Vancouver. Silvercore has been dealing with Carter Motorsports for years as a customer for our ATVs, generators, and motorsport equipment based on their exceptional customer service and competitive pricing. And I'm personally very happy that they are bringing you this episode. This was a really fun episode to record, as it's an after-action report from a recent moose hunt. While we had hoped to record this in the field, the hunt came first, and we all agreed that there'd be more value to the listeners in hearing how we break down the trip into a before, during, and after, detailing how we prepared, how we hunted, and what we learned. Our group will candidly discuss dealing with the disappointment from missed opportunities, as well as tricks we employed, which ultimately led to our group's success. For a podcast that claims to be about hunting, fishing, and outdoor adventures, we've recorded a number of different episodes, and we have yet to talk about any hunting, fishing, or outdoor adventures. So this episode is going to change that. Right now I'm sitting down with Ranger Rob Wilson, who's with BC Parks and Search and Rescue on the side, with Mike Welti, who's former Snap-on tool and fix-it extraordinaire, can fix basically anything that you put in front of him, and then Paul Ballard, who is our designated sailgar. He is the leader of the hunt, and anyone who's been listening for a while will remember Paul from episode 1. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having us here.
So in this episode, we're going to talk about a recent hunt that we went on. We went on a moose hunt, and what I'd like to do is just break it down into a before, during, and after, because we're going to have different listeners and varying backgrounds. I'd like for them to be able to take something away from this episode if they've never hunted before, if they have hunted, but maybe they might pick something else up. So why don't we just talk a little bit about how we all met? So Paul, I've known you for a number of years.
I think some 20-something years or more.
For quite some time.
Yeah. And we, through our association, both with Silvercore and other things, we've often talked about hunting. And I think we started to discuss perhaps we should be doing a hunt together. And one of the things, sort of co-occurring with that was talking with both Mike and Rob and trying to put some guys together. Some of the folks that I usually hunt with, one was backing out and wanting to go hunting pretty much this fall because of his training at work. Another fellow wanted to go on a fly-in hunting trip with some other people. So we started talking amongst ourselves about doing that. And it became a gradual invite and a coming together of guys that I thought would very much get along, which it's not just about the hunting. It's about the experience of going into the outdoors and spending time with some other people that you're going to feel comfortable with, that you can depend on. And at the end of things, you're still going to like.
Yeah, that's a big point. Now, and there's a bit of a gamble there because you've brought a few people together. Now, I'd never met you before, Mike. And Rob, you and I met on a course that Silvercore did for parks. And I think that's actually where you met as well, right, Paul?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I had met Rob before and immediately liked the guy, funny enough. You just know when you meet people. And it's the same way Mike and I are neighbors. And you just feel, I'm simpatico with this guy. And, this friendship, this relationship can get legs, and it's going to be good. You meet people every once in a while that you're disappointed with, but these by no means were any kind of disappointment.
No, very hard not to like, that's for sure. So we decided we wanted to do a moose hunt. So we all put in for a draw. Paul, you did a recce on a few different areas and came up with an area in northern BC that you thought would just be perfect.
Yes, we won't get too specific on that. It's an area where we'd had success before. The traditionally, the moose hunt is not what it used to be in many parts of the province. The availability of the animal, the numbers are not what they have traditionally been recognized to be in BC, but this is an area where I feel they were good. You're not looking to get a magnificent cranker bull from that area, but there's going to be consistent animals. And that was an important part of planning the hunt.
So we all put in, and a few of us got a group draw.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to monopolize things here, but the bison and moose in the province allow for a group hunt. So if people are not familiar with the British Columbia system, groups of 3 or 4 can combine their application for this lottery hunt. If any one of the group is successful, if it's a group of 3 or 4, they can be awarded two permits from that. If it's a group of 2, then if either one of those 2 people in the group are successful, they'll get awarded a singular permit. Now, we initially had some other people that were included in the group. Your group didn't get anything.
Hey, we got on the bison.
And when it comes back, when the results come back, they come listed by name. And the first person, Rob, who is on that list is the person that actually got drawn. So he was drawn. Mike and I were in that group. So we were able to share 2 bull tags between our group of 3. The area for any bull was reliant on you having the limited entry tag, but you were able to go to hunt there based on the fact there was an open season during that time on immature bull moose.
Right. And I just couldn't take mature bull moose.
You couldn't take a mature bull moose. That's correct.
Sure was glad that you joined us on that hunt, though, Travis. I really enjoyed your company, and you brought Finn along with you, which was a real treat for our trip to have Finn there, young Finn, and watch him and go through his process of interacting with the old boys and being part of a larger hunting camp. That was really rewarding for me.
Well, I think that's a very important thing for him as well, and thank you for that. 10 years old, all he wanted to do was get his Fish and Wildlife ID number. And so he studied for months and months prior to his birthday. On his birthday, he did his core. He immediately went into the Wildlife Federation, got his graduation certificate, and went straight over to the government office. And I mean, we got a picture of him. He couldn't be more happy with himself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So this is a huge step for a 10-year-old to be able to come in and to be invited, which was great, by everybody else to participate in a moose hunt. And that was his first moose hunt. And, he's still talking about it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I sure enjoyed his company.
And Mike, you've been on moose hunts before, have you?
I have not.
That was your very first moose hunt.
Yeah, this was my very first one. I started hunting deer probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I had pretty good success with it. And that's why I was really pretty happy and excited that my good neighbor, Paul Ballard, had invited me to come along. I thought, well, that must mean that maybe there's a place for me. Maybe there's a fit. And so, yeah, I was excited. I learned a lot. It was really neat.
Well, there's definitely a fit. So Paul, having been on many of these hunts in the past, was the Silvercore. Am I pronouncing that properly?
Silvercore. It's Gaelic for the leader of the hunt. So you could have used it if somebody was out there with the horn in front of the foxes. But well, I dug that up a few years ago to use as like an email handle.
Okay.
And looking for something unique, and I adopted that one. We started it out by, the first thing was for everyone to put in for their limited entry draw. And once we had basically everybody was behaving like children waiting for Christmas morning, but this isn't a regular thing knowing when Christmas morning is going to come. But every day getting onto the BC Ministry of the Environment website, checking to see if the results were in. And sure enough, that morning came and the text started going around. Yeah. Hey, how'd you do? How'd you do? How'd you do? And we had some success. We knew, even in the shared context of the hunt, like beyond the group hunt, everybody was going to share within whatever bounty we might have been fortunate enough to harvest. So that part was now in place. We had a purpose. We started to organize equipment. So that's a very common thing within a group of this many people. People have certain types of equipment you want to bring: vehicles, off-road vehicles, saws, you name it, everything from tents, soup to nuts. And we started working on that.
So we all met up at the pub and got pen and paper, took a look at the area we're going to be in, and started divvying up different roles and responsibilities and different tools that people would be bringing into the hunt. Of course, Paul, being the great chef that he is, was magnanimous enough to offer to do the cooking for the trip, but everybody would have to take one evening meal.
Yeah.
And that worked out well.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've been very fortunate in my kind of path of as a hunter in that I've picked good hunting mentors and good hunting partners. And I'm very fortunate to have met Paul because he's a great chef and great camp cook. And I hunt a lot with Dylan Ayers over at Eat Wild, who's also a great camp cook. And it's inspiring to try to live up to some of the foodie leadership that they both have offered in hunt camp. It's wonderful to come back from the field and have the ability to take part in an amazing meal around the campfire with a bunch of your community. And certainly if it was me on my own, I'd probably be eating out of a plastic bag, some freeze-dried food or something like that. But these guys are great.
Well, yeah. and that is indeed it. I mean, how many times, I've heard the quote, "We haven't suffered enough." I've suffered plenty on what I've eaten and had some horrible meals. And I realized that, you know what, when there's not a whole lot occupying your time, well, it is if you're fortunate to have made a harvest and you've got to do preparations on the meat and so on. But otherwise, why not? Why not make it a true holiday in so many actual senses of the word? And even on some of the fly-in trips that we've been on, we've strived to have a real treat when it comes down to the evening mealtime. Morning, a cup of noodles and or cereal or whatever like that is what you have, but that evening meal can make a big difference on the outlook of things.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how actually everybody, when we got all together and made a plan to put this trip together and whose responsibility was going to be bringing different products and things and tools to the table, that actually when we got out there, how we didn't even have to talk much or delegate much. Everybody took on a responsibility on their own, and some people went and got firewood. Others were cooking. Others were cleaning. It flowed really well. I was actually shocked and surprised how well it went.
Yeah, and that's very true, Mike. To have that planning in place, and then to see the plan come to fruition when you're there together. I mean, we're still kind of talking in the before stage here, but there's nothing can ruin a hunting camp more than somebody who's sitting on a stump all the time, watching for everybody else to get the water, or offering to, yeah, I'll take care of that, but not taking care of it. Mm-hmm. And that's been an experience in the past that has sort of eliminated somebody from being invited on future hunts. And it always is sort of a mercurial thing. You're ebbing, flowing between the people that are there and who you want to invite, how you want to try people out. And you do get disappointed very infrequently, but nonetheless disappointed they're not coming back. But this is not the case here.
I think we all know that guy. We all have one of those.
Oh, that guy?
That guy.
Or those guys.
Or those guys. Or those people.
Yeah.
But I guess there's
those people. That's
people.
That's better, yeah.
I think there's also the sort of the unspoken side. You're going on a hunt. You're not necessarily going to be successful. So if you're not successful on a hunt, what are you doing with that length of time that you're out in the bush? Are you going to be enjoying yourself regardless? And although everyone wants to be successful, if you make just the success of the hunt the harvesting of an animal, it can make for a very unpleasant camp experience. If the success of the hunt is going to be predicated around the enjoyment of the people that you're with and making the most of the time you're there, and hey, you just so happen to be able to harvest an animal, that should be the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is so critical in all this. As a core examiner, as a core trainer, from kids to adults, people will come in and say, "Oh, I want to get my hunting license because it's going to be a source of cheap meat and I won't have to go to the grocery store anymore." And that's so wrong. Hunting is all about the experience. I've been blessed many times, but I've also come home empty-handed, and to understand that, I'm never empty of memories, regardless of whatever might have been brought home to feed the family and share with friends, if there was nothing brought home, I do have those memories that I can share with people. And that's a really critical thing in the ethical approach to hunting to learn that first. There are
for sure
people who believe that it's motivated by greed, that they're entitled to something. And as soon as you feel that you're entitled to it, then you should find something else to do.
Agreed.
Yeah. Hey, one thing that I want to do is I want to take us back to the pub there. And, Paul, thank you for inviting me. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the group. And the Hunting Gods has provided us with the opportunity to have, we were fortunate enough to be able to have the opportunity to plan this hunt and get together as a group. And it's the first time for us all to get together as a group. And the first time I've met Mike, and we're sitting there around the table. And I come from a background of being involved with search and rescue and having gone on lots of, complex adventures, alpine adventures, big trips in the past. And it's all about planning, right? It's super important to have a good plan in place and to make sure that you have the right team with you in order to be able to not only successfully accomplish an objective, but to accomplish that objective with a margin of safety. And, aside from the visiting the pub and having good conversations, very quickly became clear to me that the folks that were planning this trip together had some street cred, some experience under their belt. Like, I know, Paul, you're going through the list of things that we had to contribute, that there was expectations that we would contribute to the group and how we would organize our trip very methodically, which was great. But the thing that came clear to me was everyone had the ability to contribute to the team. And not only to contribute, like I was trying to contribute some of my equipment, some of the things that I could bring to the team. Well, like I've got a chainsaw, a great chainsaw. Everybody on our team had the capability to bring a chainsaw. And it just shows that, if you spend enough time in the wilderness environment, if you spend enough time out there as a hunter, you kind of bring together the needed equipment. And it very quickly became evident to me that the folks around the table had the capability and the experience to be out there, to work independently, but to work also as a team in a team environment. And I felt pretty comfortable with the group that we had put together.
We actually had one more person in that group.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that, Sean Martel. We need to mention Sean, and there's a great guy who's very much a contributor to any group. I've hunted with him a number of times, from fly-in to drive-in hunts and heavy camping with him. Great guy. And we miss you, Sean. You should be here with us, and I know you're going to listen to this when you get the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, he was put on course and for work reasons had to take that. And that changed the driving arrangements going up. We were going to have 3 vehicles going up, and that changed it down to 2 vehicles. My son Finn and I, we drove up a day early. We wanted to take our time. Being 10 years old, figured, okay, we're going to take a lot of breaks and make this as enjoyable as possible. And the 3 of you drove up the next day.
Yep.
And that was a nice long drive, all packed into a vehicle together with a whole bunch of kit. And I know you guys all took turns driving, from what I understand.
Oh, absolutely. It was shared equally across the board. We drew straws, actually, for who would go first. And, hey, Paul got to go first. I think it was because his truck.
I think we had somebody that loved his truck so much that he just couldn't get out of the driver's seat.
That's not too bad. I sure wish I was in the back having a nap getting there.
Well, and that was all part of the planning was, you can take these trips, and when you are traveling, 10, 12 hours, some people choose to leave very early in the morning and get there as the sun is setting in the place where you want to strike camp. And boy, it's tough. It's come to be a sort of a regular practice now, is to leave the day before, try and grab a motel or hotel the night before, and then enter into a shorter drive to the final push, so that you're fresh. You can do everything during the day. All the unexpected things can be dealt with when you do it that way. And we chose to do that. We drove up, grabbed a motel the night before. The 3 of us did. You, of course, had your mobile home on wheels behind you there. And we went. But now I guess we've left behind the planning part, and now we're in the This is the good part.
We're starting to get into the hunt. We're getting into the hunt. The location that we're going to, I had a general idea. Now, Paul, you and I talked about it, and when I was driving up closer, you were giving me directions on the phone as I'm cutting out of cell range. And so like I say, I had a general idea where we'd be. I knew that if I brought the trailer up and parked it, I would be more or less in the area. I was really hoping to be spot on. But I got in, long trailer, and what is it, a 20-foot converted utility trailer that had the side-by-side in the back. And so get this thing out. I've got my son driving the side-by-side ahead of me so he can kind of scope the area in case there's
Was it dark then, or was it still daylight?
Oh, it was still daylight at that point, but it was starting to get dark. So anyways, we found a spot. Paul says, you'll find an area. It's going to be an open area. There'll be a game pole already set up there. And I found an open area in the general vicinity, and there was a game pole. So I set up. Sun was going down. And we've got the side-by-side now parked about, 15 yards away from the converted utility trailer that we'll be staying in. And I'm in there in the trailer. My son's babbling away about video games and all the other things that occupy a 10-year-old's mind. And we are eating some vegetables, going to cook up some hot dogs. Water's boiling, and I hear a click, 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 click on the window, on the trailer. And then it's about 6 feet up off the ground, this window. And in a fraction of a second, I'm thinking about this, like, what the hell? Click, click, click. What is that? And first thing that went through my head was, it's a bear. Then I thought, wait a minute, what if it's Paul and he's clicking there with his keys? I'm like, no, that's stupid. It's a bear, right? So as I'm thinking this, I'm already up and loading up the shotgun, and my son's still talking away until he looks over and says, Dad, what are you doing?
This isn't a normal action of my father.
Is every hunt going to be like this?
And I said, I think we got a bear outside. As I'm saying this, and as I'm loading up the shotgun, I hear a big pop, pop, snap, pop. And I can tell that whatever it is going at the side-by-side at the moment. So I have the shotgun loaded up, tell my son, go in the corner of the trailer over there, just keep down. I'm going to head out. I got a headlamp on, turned it on, and of course the batteries are dying on it, and it's not throwing enough light, and I can't even see the side-by-side. It's pitch dark at this point, and all I can see is two giant glowing eyes reflecting, staring back at me. And at this point, it looks like the whatever the creature was, the bear is what I'm assuming at this point, is on its back legs, standing up on the back of the side-by-side with his front paws on the back of the side-by-side. And my son's getting quite concerned over what could be going on. And I give a shout to the bear, and it doesn't do anything. And so I tell my son, give him some bear spray, walk him through the process of how to use it, and have him there beside me. I kind of explain, try and get him calmed down a bit. Here's what's going to happen. And, it's looks like it's going to be a problem bear. I don't need this thing coming back throughout the night. I'm going to try and scare the thing off. And if I can't scare it off, it might get a little bit loud. And anyways, he goes back into the corner. I go out, headlamp on, and shotgun up really close, of course, looking left and right, like, rule of 1 + 1. Not necessarily sure applies to bears, but rule of 1 + 1, if there's one, there's probably two, right? And looking left and right. And anyways, I was able to scare the bear off. It didn't take off quickly, just kind of sauntered away. I don't think it came back through the night, but in the morning we took a look, and it went to town on that side-by-side.
Boy, did it ever.
Oh, man. I was fortunate enough to have one of Dylan's patented butt pads to be able to keep my rear end somewhat dry and warm. But it ate all the seats out. It went into the back. There's no food in there, and got pictures. It went all around the outside of the trailer as well.
That was pretty impressive when we got there and saw the marks on the outside of your trailer.
Yeah.
Paw prints and claw prints all over the side.
Yeah. So we were definitely in bear country. Black bear, big black bear, not grizzly, but we were in grizzly country as well.
I don't envy you that. That's an exciting situation that is the wrong kind of excitement for us.
Yeah, well, when you saw what he had done to the side-by-side, or she, probably he, you knew there's as much as you feel safe and secure in your RV, he could have just peeled that door open and come in if he wanted to do that.
Oh, easily. It ripped the seats right off.
Yeah.
I had no idea there's a compartment underneath my seats as well, which I do know now. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Carter Honda in Vancouver was kind enough to be able to take care of new seats and free install. So I would highly recommend. They're the place that I purchased the side-by-side from and gave him my sob story about the bear and showed him the pictures. And
not too many people have that story. That's good.
No.
That's good.
The second thing I wanted to mention about that particular situation was after the fact, I contacted one of my friends in the Conservation Officer Service just to kind of explore whether or not similar circumstances had happened where bears had eaten the seats out of machines before, quads or ATVs, and apparently it's not an uncommon occurrence that it's believed to be that there's some sort of like the petroleum product or some sort of attractant in the seats, and bears are definitely attracted to the seats on those machines. So
that's why all those guys that actually live off the grid up there, every one of their snow machines or their side-by-sides or ATVs have duct tape covering the seats.
Or what
it's probably really a chew toy.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what they probably feel it's something they like to chew on.
Yeah. Could be. Another way you could address that is by putting a perimeter fence, an electrified perimeter fence around your machine if you knew you were going to be in bear country and that was a problem.
Yeah. Well, we were in that area that we went to. Of course, we didn't have cell phone communication or anything like that. So the plan was for us as we were arriving, after you had your bear encounter, was to get on the shortwave radio, and we were communicating that way. So it was interesting. We drove in. Now, to your credit, you were within about 500 meters of the actual spot where we intended on camping. I would later look at my GPS and said, I could have given him the exact coordinates from the year and the year before that.
I was wondering why you didn't.
Just for adventure factor.
I was already accused of being a techno geek when I said, why don't you just drop a pin with Google Earth?
To which I replied, what? What? But anyways, you weren't bad, and then we got up there, so we moved over to what we refer to as our usual camp in the spot. A little bit more open. The trapper that lives in the area goes, "Oh yeah, you're in the clay pit." He called that, but It was okay. It wasn't too wet, so it wasn't all that bad. And somebody had certainly put a whole bunch of duck boards down there that we could move around in. Set up a pretty comfortable camp, bounded by your trailer. We put up our wall tent, which is kind of a wilderness mansion to me, I think.
It's tough to beat the wall tent.
Yeah.
Works great.
So we got established, and that was it. I think we were able to get out for our first hunt that afternoon, check out the area a little bit. It was there was a lot of hunters, and probably more than what we had encountered in past years in the same area, but it still wasn't too bad. As Mike would say later, so I don't know why we bother bringing ATVs or anything up here. You just drive the roads in your pickup truck. That's what everybody does.
Yeah, that's what everyone was doing.
So true.
Yeah. And what did you think, though, Mike, for your first moose hunt like that?
Well, that we went out hunting that afternoon, like you said, and I didn't see anything. I basically spent some time at a clearing. I think it was on a 12-kilometer mark. And then the next morning, I decided to go out the same area and go a little further down the road, and went a little further, went to a clearing, and I decided, I better have a good look around here. And I got up on the highest little log pile I could find and decided to get my binoculars out and look around. And I spent probably 2-3 minutes just looking around and didn't see anything. So I thought, it's time to carry on. And I went to pick up my rifle, and I looked back up, and lo and behold, there was a moose walking across the back. And I was so surprised, and now I was all excited. My heart's going, and I'm not sure what I should do. Like, do I go after it? I wasn't sure if it was a cow or a bull. And I thought, if I go and walk rapidly through this clearing, I'll make a lot of noise and scare it. But if I go too slow, it'll take off on me. So I guess I kind of opted for somewhere in between, and I did go after it. And, of course, it had disappeared into the woods, and I decided to sort of follow it into the woods where I thought it had gone in, and there was so much windfall and dead wood that I had to just virtually hike over top of each log to make any progress in there. So I decided it was time to take a little break, and I just sat down and took my backpack off and started to regroup my thoughts and thought, what should I do next? And I thought, well, I'm going to have to give up on this. And I still had no idea whether it was a cow or a bull. But lo and behold, I heard her call. And it was the first time in my life I've ever experienced a cow calling. It happened twice, but it was just too far distance, and the woods were just too hard to traverse. So I decided to give up on it. And I went back to the ATV and carried on the hunt. I guess, I will remember that. I really will, because it's something new experience. And once you experience something new, it's kind of neat. It stays with you, and it was enjoyable. I carried on from there.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that became apparent to me is, I've hunted all over British Columbia. I've hunted in northern BC. I'm primarily a mule deer hunter, an alpine hunter. It's kind of where I enjoy spending most of my time, and I love the mountains and the grasslands. And where we were, Zippermouth Creek, was
Zippermouth Creek. You got that?
Yeah, it was absolutely impenetrable country, right? So it's very rare on a hunting trip where I am not enthusiastic about going into the forest and trying to put together a bit of a still hunt. And the one time that I decided that I was going to wander off out of a clear cut and wander through a patch of forest to try and hunt up a moose, I hated myself for 2 hours straight while I was wandering through the forest. It's just impenetrable country up there. And you have to modify your hunting technique as a result.
Yeah, that black spruce forest, that we see in the, central interior part of the province is just so unlike any other of the ecosystems that we can hunt in. You've hunted up north, in the Northern Rockies, and you get up, and sure, it's black spruce, but there's natural occurring meadows and open areas that you can move through. It might be a little muddy underfoot, but you still see for good distances. You can gain elevation to look down and glass an area. But that interior plateau is a really unique circumstance. And, when people do try and chastise others for truck hunting, for road hunting, you can see there's merit to it.
Oh, yeah.
In the hopes that those big animals will be standing on the road edge when you get it, so you don't have to move it too far. That's one huge advantage. But also just the covering of ground and looking over all those cut blocks. I mean, it is an area that's been highly, highly logged for many years. And as a result, what has grown up over that shin tangle and kind of, from past practices in the forestry industry to leave all that stuff on the ground. It's tough moving, and it's amazing those big animals can get through it too.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
It's shocking, but no, and it's one of those things, adapting to the type of environment that you're going to hunt in. And not being able to say that, well, what I've used is there's certain things that always apply about wind and south-facing slopes and those, those practices always, stand the test of time. But the physical, still hunting, very difficult.
Yeah, it was humbling country.
Yeah, that's right.
So one thing was, I think it's worth talking about is to mention that our plan was we had a certain number of machines for a certain number of people. And I think it's worth talking about how that kind of transpired and how that worked.
Yeah, so we were, the intent was there's lots of good roads that you can drive by vehicle almost everywhere. And as I told you guys, I felt that a Honda Civic would have got you into a lot of the cut blocks. But to get beyond some of the cut blocks where the deactivations were, we found that the fact that Mike's ATV, his regular style ride-on ATV was much more adept at getting through some of the deactivations, whereas my side-by-side, Travis's side-by-side, a little bit larger, got lots of places, there's no question about that, but some of those deactivations were clearly only surmountable with a smaller machine. And boy, that paid off in spades later. That was very helpful. But, using the machines to get around, not so much to hunt from. I think we spent more time moving out, dropping off into areas and, having the machine as a backup for, transport purposes afterwards. And that's the way I've experienced hunting in that area before.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I I found it interesting that the ATV type machine is actually very noisy. And there was a couple of times I was just still hunting near a cut block quite close to the road, and a pickup truck would be driving by very slowly, and it seemed just so much more quiet. Like it was just quieter, and I often wondered at that time, are our machines scaring the animals prematurely, like early, and maybe truck hunting has more value based on the noise factor.
And particularly in that environment too, you can't argue with the fact that there was a lot of people up there doing that, and a lot of apparently having some success at doing it.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the end, our success did not come. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but our success was from stand hunting actually up there. Using the machine to get to an area, but to an area that was inaccessible to anybody with pickup trucks completely, and to take a stand and just waiting, watching, careful of the wind and the like.
So we'd been hunting for a few days now, and we had seen moose, but we hadn't had a chance to take a shot at a moose. Grouse, a lot of grouse, which is good. Definitely keeps a 10-year-old happy being able to go out and do some grouse hunting. Saw a lynx. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, we saw a couple of lynxes between us, I think.
Yeah.
What else did we see up there? We had a
Black
wolf.
bear.
Yeah, black bear.
I seen 2 black bear.
Yeah.
Saw a few moose hanging in other hunters' camps.
Yeah. And
So did our morning hunt a few days in, and Finn and I decide, well, let's go and do a grouse hunt. We'll drive the road a little bit in the side by side because it's warming up. Sun's out. The grouse will be getting themselves warmed up on the road, and driving down, and we see a couple guys in a pickup truck standing outside.
funny enough, in a pickup truck.
And one of them gestures me over, and so I go on over, and he said, "Hey, you got your big bull tag?" I said, "Well, I don't, but in our group, we've got others who do, right?" He said, "Okay, well, that's good enough for us. We saw a bull moose go into that section of woods right there. So let's see if we can get it out. You take a shot." And I said, "Well, hold on a second. I don't have my bull moose tag, but others in the group do." "Oh, no, that's good. That's good enough for us. You go ahead." And I said, "Look it." And they kept pushing. Saying, no, you can do it. That's good enough. I said, finally, I had to explain to him. I said, "I've got a 10-year-old here with me. What example would I be setting for him if I showed poor ethics, right?" Oh, okay. Well, I get it if you put it like that. Fair enough. So I said, "Tell you what, I'm going to boogie back. If you guys are going to stay here, great. I'll boogie back. I'll get someone who does have the tag so we can properly, legally take this shot." So we do that. Going back to the camp. Of course, Finn's very excited, and I'm trying to contain my excitement and hoping that this thing's still going to be there when we come on back. And
wasn't that far, actually.
It really wasn't far from
about
our
a
camp.
kilometer and a half or something down the road.
About that, yeah.
At the speed that Travis was traveling to get back to us, I think it was like 30 seconds.
So I come in, I say, "Hey, anyone want to take a shot at a bull moose?" And everyone just looks at me, and I said, "Well, we got one just down the road here if you guys want to give it a shot." And he goes, "Oh, I guess." I'm like,
No,
"Well,
there was no
what are
I
we
guess."
doing? What are we doing here, right? I think it took a second for what I was saying to actually register. And I got the sense there's probably a little bit of incredulousness, thinking it won't be there when we go back. I mean, sure, you saw it there, right? But anyways, Paul, you got up, you're in your side by side, and all of a sudden, everyone's in their vehicles driving down the road, and then starts going faster and faster to get there. I'm like, okay, they got it. I got it.
The interesting part of it for me was I was the furthest one away from you when you were explaining this. So I'm not the best of hearing, but I was doing the dishes for the lunch that we just had, and I kept thinking that the moose was down. Somebody had shot it, and I said to Paul while I'm doing these dishes, I says, "Well, don't move the moose. I'll come down a little later and I'll bring my camera and I want to take a picture of it. And he's like, oh, well, you could, well, whatever, you could just come down. I thought, yeah, I might as well come right now. So, and then, of course, with my experience in the past with any hunting, I thought to myself, I didn't have my rifle on my ATV and I didn't have my magazine. And I thought, well, I should take it because sometimes another animal's right there. And if you're hunting, you're always hunting. So I took it with me as we headed down there.
Yeah, I figured I wasn't properly relaying, maybe trying to suppress my excitement a little bit too much there.
I had no idea until I got to the corner there that it was in the bush. And I still thought it was maybe laying in the bush, but I guess it was actually alive.
So we pull up there, and the first thing Paul does when we get out, we give a quick lay of the land. And Paul, you let rip with a fantastic moose call. What did that sound like? Can you do that? Can you do a moose call for us?
I'm going to move away from the microphone.
Fantastic. So give us one of those.
That's
Well,
what
we did a little
that's what we
bit.
call the sexy cow call.
We did a little bit first. Those other guys were there with that Dodge truck, and they were kind of saying it's somewhere between there and there, pointing to us, like a dog leg in the road.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, full 90-degree
yeah.
corner.
So we're thinking, okay, well, we got to contain it in there. And if he's still in there, he's going to come out on the road likely. So Rob went one way, Mike went the other, and then I called.
Yeah,
And-
so there was some planning happening there
Yeah,
before
yeah,
we
and-
actually start.
Yeah, so
coaxing that
it wasn't
bull out.
Sure.
a complete cluster, as some
No,
people might
no,
want
no.
to say. No, we had a plan, and so we stuck to it.
And that plan expanded. Finn and I took back down the road to flush it out.
Yeah, to make some noise down there further, because there was this triangle of woods that the animal had been seen in. There was a creek down below where you could kind of look across there. So if it had been seen, and we're all on radios by this time now as well. And so the group is now hunting.
So Finn and I go down. We pull into the woods, start hiking our way in, making some noise. Figured we'll flush out the moose back onto the road, back in your direction. And we're in there for not too long, actually. And we hear a shot. Fantastic. It worked. We flushed it out. So come on back.
So what happened here was with Paul's calling, the bull came out on the road on my side of the road, and it was, I'd say, somewhere around 150 to 200 yards away, and it just started walking down the road away from us. Paul called again. It decided to stop and turn itself and look back. And that's when I decided to take a shot. And the real mistake I made was I didn't take my time. I wasn't in a better position, and I didn't zoom in on my scope, and the shot obviously didn't work. But we did, I guess, we got a little hair from him.
Got a little bit of hair.
Yeah.
And then we tracked for hours.
Hours and hours. To Mike's credit, it's always hard to, be the guy that has to relive that moment. And I'm sure you've, spent the odd sleepless night since then, thinking shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it all chalks up. And every single person that's hunted either has or will have that same moment occur to them. It is just that way. And
It's a part of hunting.
It's a part of hunting.
And it's something you have to square yourself with before you go out.
Right. And you have to accept that. We got down. We could clearly see the track from the animal. He was moving soundly. He was, often what you see is an animal that's hit starts to stagger a bit. There'll be some falling into the bush. There'll be scuffs out with their hoof. This guy, you could see he was boogieing. He was going away.
And he was boogieing along the Forest Service Road.
Right. He didn't go into he didn't go into the trees. So he was totally taking the path of least resistance where he could move the fastest, and he moved good. So tracked him down into a cut block. Mike did a trencherman's job of staying on the track, staying out there, went back. I personally went back just to look for a blood trail. I wanted, because we hadn't seen any blood on that track yet.
Yeah, correct.
I went right to the spot where I seen, that's not good English. I went back to the spot where I had seen that the animal had been hit. He did kind of a little hop skip when the shot went. So I looked, I could see the scuff from his hoofs there. I could see where he turned and where the track we'd following had begun. So I just carefully got down, looked, and about one dime-sized drop of blood was it. There was hair there, long hair, back hair, shaved off, and it was laying on the ground just beyond where the track had turned up. So pretty satisfied, based on my experience, Your Honor, that the animal hadn't been too badly hit. In fact, probably nothing more than as they said on Monty Python, just a flesh wound. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, unfortunate. We looked and looked. We spent a lot of time.
Oh, we sure did.
And weren't able to find him again. But that was good, but a big experience. And
absolutely. And for me, it was a big learning lesson for me because in the years of hunting deer, like I said, I've been doing it about six years. I harvest deer every year, and most of them have been one-shot kills. And so I guess I kept having a lot of confidence that it shouldn't be me, but I guess it's got to happen to me. And that's why it's a humbling and it teaches you something. But I go back to the drawing board and I'll be reminding myself for the fundamentals again of being prepared for the shot.
He's still got a trophy, though. I picked up some of that hair.
Yeah.
I wrapped a little red string around it and left it on his pillow that night. So.
You sure did. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of brings out the need to have a conversation about the methodology that you can employ and probably should employ after making the shot. And one of my recommendations is that when you shoot at an animal, first off, it's a very exciting experience. And from the time when you shoot the animal to the time when you recover the animal, you've got a lot of work to do potentially. It's important to take a moment to plan out your next steps. And for me, it looks like this. So I shoot an animal. First off, I watch the animal, and I'm watching for the reaction after the shot or at the shot. And in this case, Paul, you did that, I believe. I remember you said something about the reaction of the animal.
It didn't look like it was a hard hit to me.
Yeah.
He just kind of skipped his legs out a bit. He'd been nicked, and that was the feeling I had, based again on seeing a few animals shot over the years. And that was the sense that I had.
Yeah. Okay. So from the time when I pull the trigger, I watch the animal. I want to see how it reacts. And the animal will either drop right in front of you or it'll wander off. And you watch how it moves off. I note the spot at which I hit the animal. And I actually take a piece of flagging tape and I tie a piece of flagging tape to a branch at the spot where I shot from. And I'll take my compass and I actually shoot a bearing towards the animal. In this case, that wasn't required because the animal was out in front of us on a logging road and it was booking down the logging road and you saw it run until you couldn't see it anymore.
Well, we saw it about 3 or 4 more times going down that road in front of us at distances of upwards of 300, maybe 400 yards. Sometimes again, at turning a corner, seeing it again at a couple hundred yards as it went that way, but it was a matter of, everybody trying to get up to see. The other hunters that were there, the one guy was saying, he's heading towards water, and which is a legitimate experience that these animals hard hit often will go to water. They often, to me, seem to go downhill. I've seen very few animals when they've been hard hit to go up a hill. But this guy his stride was pretty big.
Yep.
That we got down. But getting back to what you're saying, Rob, to go to the exact spot that you believe the animal was hit is critical. And a lot of, inexperienced new hunters, not in this circumstance, of course, but will maybe take a circle route around, or they'll walk away and then come back and lose track of where the animal was. And it's critical to get there. Have a look right on the ground, find those scuff marks, find the blood trail or some hair or some indication that the animal was hit, and then to start doing just a 180 degree, then a 240 degree sweep ahead to see where the animal went. And it's shocking how a great big 1,000-pound animal, when hit, can go like 10 steps, flop down from where you actually got to, and you can't see it.
Yep. They're amazingly well camouflaged. Yeah.
Right. And if they do expire, there's no sound from it. There's no there's no nothing. And you're just thinking, oh man, and you take 10 steps and you go, it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And that happens a lot. And I think a lot of people give up far too soon, you know, and that's a sin. There's no other word for it. You have that huge obligation. If you pull the trigger on an animal like that, you must do absolutely everything. And I felt clearly, Mike, he was going above and beyond to try and track that animal down. So in this instance.
Yeah, and it was an interesting process. I mean, I felt like we did it right. After the shot, we planned it. We certainly were able to identify the spot where we feel the animal went into a clear cut and started heading towards the forest. And we took some time to carefully break down track by track where that animal had taken each step. And we used flagging tape and even bits of toilet paper to mark out the trail and try and get a direction of travel. And we gave it our darndest and just didn't work out in that case. And that's because that moose was still walking.
Yeah. And he's going to be there for next year.
Yep, absolutely.
A little bigger.
So evening came, had dinner, and it was quite somber, quite quiet. Obviously, lots of emotion, lots of thoughts going through everyone's heads, but that's hunting. That's something that people have to prepare themselves for. And, you know, stepping into a hunting group where we don't all know each other, we don't know each other's backgrounds, I thought that everyone did a very good job supporting one another. It was very good.
Minus the move of like putting the little bow on.
That was the worst of that one.
Well, you gotta kind of have to do that.
That's right. That was the worst we did on that one. There was no, you know, accusations or anything. No. And I've been in hunting camps where people had a bird on the shoot, you know, and nobody did that. So it was all okay. But though it was somber, that was just steeled our resolve to try and get out there and certainly. Now, we should mention that this whole time to this point, somebody's resolve was steeled on getting the bear that had made intrusions to the side-by-side too, but I
was hoping for that one, that's for sure.
And an interesting area for the amount of track and animal sign that was there. And we saw everything from those big black bear pad prints to wolf prints that were, you know, pretty much luncheon plate size. They were some good wolf prints there too.
And grizz tracks.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. So there was, you know, a whole variety. What I had seen there before in that area, which we didn't see this time, were any deer track. There's not a lot of deer in the area, but typically down, you know, towards the lake shore, often we would have seen, you know, smaller white-tailed deer track. We didn't see that anywhere in any of the track traps that we were checking out in any of those spots, but amazingly big wolf. There was probably some really nice wolf. We did meet I had the opportunity to meet the trapper from up there. Very informative guy. Lived off the grid for over 30 years up in that area, like off the grid, and had his trapping license and had the trapping concession in there for some 20-something years. Knew every inch of the land up there. Very, very, very friendly guy too. What a smoker. In a half an hour, he must have smoked 5 cigarettes. I don't know how he could do it. Guy older than me, but he could move. He was all right.
You know, and that's a super important part as well, getting that local intel.
Yeah.
Being open enough, talking with the others in the area, respectful enough, and they'll share with you.
And he was very, very open and, you know, without offering, but confirming. Let's put it that way. He was, you know, he was saying, yeah, that you know where you are and you know what you're in the right spot. So we kind of led off from there. Got some grouse in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then
we'll fast forward a couple of days.
Hard
hunting. Early up, hunting all day.
What was happening with you over those couple of days before the fateful evening, Mike?
Well, I was, you know, I'd been going back to the same areas and I decided I had to explore the area a bit, being the first time up there. And I thought it's time to get around and have a look and see what other opportunities, look for more sign. I went to one area and decided to try my calling again. And I was actually also very surprised that in this one time I called, and I think it was within probably 3 minutes, a cow comes running out into the clearing and came right up along the side and probably came within 60 yards of me. Me being new to the moose hunting, I had no idea. I thought that this should be a bull. It's like, why would a cow come? But of course, talking to Paul, he informs me that sometimes they're attracted to the fact that maybe there is a bull over there, and so that was also a great experience for me because it was the first time that I were able to actually call and have actually a reaction and something actually work out for me.
We don't want to be too misogynistic, you know.
Yeah.
Women have urges.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that, I decided to just do more discovering in other areas, and that's when I came upon a couple of what they call deactivations, where the loggers and the industry doesn't want anybody to go past, so they basically pull out a bridge. And fortunately, with that trapper that Paul had met, has his trap lines there, that he had built a couple of ATV bridges across these little creeks and rivers. So I was able to pass them with my ATV being smaller and narrower. And I went into another clearing and found more sign, a lot more tracks for moose there. And as I went further, I found there was even another deactivation. And so I crossed that. And actually in that area, there was up to 3 different deactivations. Large, wonderful areas for moose. Seen a couple moose in there. Got me excited, and unfortunately, no opportunities for myself, but that led us to decide to maybe we need to get a few more guys in there.
You were taking some good pictures. You're seeing lots of sign. You're seeing the moose out there. And
virtually every day, I would see a cow, at least one, if not a cow and calf. And so, yeah, I was, it felt close. It felt close.
It was a good area.
Yeah. And like Mike said, the deactivations were stopping it. General access was low in there, so they weren't being disturbed by other hunters. There was a lot of people it was the odd person walking into that area that we encountered. They'd park their truck, but nowhere near the kind of pressure that the roads were sustaining at that time. And so again, this takes us back and forth. Pickup truck, quiet, covers lots of ground, picks up your odds. But I think you favor your odds when you can get into some place it's a little quieter,
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you, Paul. And I think it's important to recognize that Mike actually was probably the most successful hunter when it came to actually seeing wildlife, when it came to seeing moose and a bunch of moose. Mike, you covered a bunch of territory on your ATV. You saw a lot of country, and as a result, it seems like you saw a significant amount more moose than any of the other hunters in our group. And I think that's because you covered so much ground in the course of your day, which is like the exact opposite of the way that I was hunting. I was relying on other people to put me in a spot, and then I was basically hanging out in the wilderness and I was on my feet. And it didn't work out so well for me for the most part.
So I was due to take off the next day. And Mike says, Rob, why don't you jump on the back of my ATV? I've been having some good luck in this one area. Come with me. So you guys said, why don't you tell us about how that worked out?
Well, yeah, I guess I was excited because to me, I seen the most sign in that area. More so, like Paul was saying, because it wasn't pressured by other people being able to access it. You had to go through these 2 deactivations, and most people didn't want to walk it. And side-by-sides were probably a little bit big to get across, so they weren't even going in there. So I asked Rob, I said, well, if you want to come to a new area, I'll bring you in. And yeah, he was willing. We decided to bring you in there that one evening, and I brought you to a spot that was it had great vegetation. It was a large clearing, probably a kilometer by a kilometer in size, and I dropped you off at one spot and explained to you where I had seen them, and I said, if you head that way, good luck. And I decided to go another way, and I guess you can let us know maybe what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, at that point in the hunt, I felt kind of discouraged. It's a different it's a hunt that I'm not used to, and I'm not used to relying on other people for transportation. I'm used to being able to kind of find my own way, and certainly throughout the course of the hunt, as much as I had a great time in camp and I had my own experiences being on foot, I felt somewhat discouraged having to rely on other people to kind of shepherd me around the wilderness and drop me off in these locations, and I get picked up at the end of the day. But yeah, Mike had seen many moose, and it was obvious that he was kind of focusing on a zone that had a higher likelihood of success. So
Yeah, I just thought it was an area that, because of it being so vast and large, that I can only see so much in one spot. And I thought, with the hunters we had, I thought, well, why not have one person being in one area and I can still be down in another clearing that needed to be covered also. So I really thought it would be better to have two people in there than one, and maybe even three would have been better.
yeah, so Mike drops me off. He drops me off in the middle of this desolate moonscape, essentially. There's this like significant clear cut. Like, we drove into this clear cut, and as Mike had so eloquently said, it was deactivated. And we drive through the deactivation a couple kilometers, and all of a sudden this clear cut opens up, and it goes forever, right, on both sides of the road. They're pretty significant clear cuts in that country. And there's a spur road. Mike drops me off at, says, gee, this is a big clear cut. There's lots of good vegetation in there, and explains to me how he'd hunted it in the past. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, holy crap, this is big clear cut, and there's no way there's going to be a moose standing in the middle of this clear cut, right? But I walk through it, and there's giant windrows of trees that are basically low value trees that are left on the side of the road, and one of the tacks is to climb up on top of a tree pile so you can see into the vegetation of the clear cut. Anyways, I walked around this clear cut for a couple of hours, because that's how long it took me to actually walk these Forest Service roads. Found the best spot that I thought I would like to hunt from with the best vantage point, and I sat down just off the road in between a couple of these large windrows, and I crack off my sexy cow call that Paul taught me. And my sexy cow call does not sound anything like this. So my sexy cow call sounds like that, but with emphysema. So yeah, I tried calling for a little bit, called for a little bit, and then I guess I should mention I'm half deaf. I worked as an automotive machinist for many, many years before it was cool to have earplugs, and I teach my coworkers how to use firearms at work. I shoot, and yeah, as a result, I'm not blessed in the hearing front, but I think I hear just off the edge of the clear cut in the forest, directly across from me, like the shortest distance across from me, I think I hear some noise in the brush. Like, it could actually be a bull moose raking the brush. So I got excited for a minute there, and I let out another call, and it's that high and low, right? You're excited, you think you hear something, and you blast out that other call, and you wait, and nothing happens. So I resigned myself to my ears playing tricks on me. Of course, this is a process of waiting, and I knew I had until last night when Mike was going to pick me up. And I call again. 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, I call again. And I see movement out in the corner of my eye, about 600 yards away. I bring my binoculars up, and lo and behold, there's a big old dark moose walking towards me. That was pretty exciting. The bull moose was headed right in my direction, coming right for me, and then it'd stop. And I would play with it a little bit and call again, and the moose would, from this point where it would be stopped and quartered away from me, it'd turn around and I'd start heading in my direction, to the point where it got to within 500 yards, and I actually picked my rifle up and looked at it through my scope, thinking, ooh, should I take that shot? Because the wind was not really in my favor. I was concerned. But I didn't take the shot. I called and it kept coming. And I called and it kept coming. It would stall up every 50, 100 yards. And eventually I had to watch this moose walk behind one of those big windrows and not know that I was going to come out the other side. And that was one of the most nerve-wracking moments of my life, to try and think about whether I take that shot, the lower odds shot at a long distance, or I try to call it in to nice and close. I chose to be conservative, tried to call it in nice and close, and fortunately, it cooperated. I got a good shot, or I found a good sight picture in between some vegetation, held my rifle there, and unfortunately, the wind was blowing right towards that window of opportunity, and I knew that as soon as the moose stepped into that shooting lane, it would win me. So I would have to be efficient in my shooting. So I waited. The moose walked right into my shooting lane. I was like, one more step. I took the step. I pulled the trigger, and the moose went down. It was great. Very fortunate. And it was at last light.
It was at last light. Paul had started making some dinner, some food up, and
Yeah, we're back at camp. You and I and Finn are back at camp, and we heard the shot. I'm making a face. I should make a face. I need to be
It's going to show up
audible here.
great
That's
on the
right. It's not
podcast.
going to show well on the podcast. We looked, and did we hear another shot?
Nope.
I think we just heard one shot.
Just the
there.
one, yeah. And then we're thinking, we waited, and then we darn radios.
Yeah.
We were trying to communicate, but we were getting back and forth on the radios, but pretty much got confirmed that Rob had harvested a moose.
Well, there was a period of time there where it was a little uncertain, probably about 20 minutes or so, and there was definitely a lot of excitement back at camp, because we knew, in your gut,
Yeah.
this is different. People should be coming back now. We should be in radio distance, but we weren't. And so that's going to be what? We've got a moose, or there's a problem. Somebody's stuck or injured.
And both of which causes that bit
Sure.
of a gut check.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, what do we need to do?
Sure.
Yeah, and I had, after dropping off Rob in that location, I had probably gone about another 6 kilometers down the road to another clearing, maybe even a little further. I heard the shot too, but I thought, well, there are other hunters in the area, so I wasn't really keeping my hopes up too much that it was possibly Rob.
Because our hopes had been dashed too many
We
times.
had a little somber moments there for a while, but either way, you're always hopeful. And I said to Rob, well, I'm going to come right at when it gets quite dark. So I left my area when it was getting dark, and so it took me still a while to travel with the ATV to the meeting point where Rob had agreed to come to the Y of the road, and that's where he was going to be. And it was right in the middle of the large cut block that he was hunting. And as I pull up there, there's no Rob. And I'm looking around, and I look far down the cut block, and I see ATV headlight. And I'm going, oh, there's another ATV down there. Well, maybe somebody's talking to Rob. But as I looked a little more, and I kept looking, and I thought, it's not moving. And lo and behold, I realize it's actually a fire. And I thought, oh, that must mean the moose is down. And it's good on Rob for thinking that way. I probably wouldn't have thought that, to build a fire. And so I went down there to meet Rob, and pretty exciting time.
Yeah, it was. And I sure appreciated your help there, Mike. One of the things that I've learned over the year, and I've had my hunting mentors teach me, is how to build fire. And I've been encouraged to build fire. And when that moose went down, of course, my thing is I have my process that I follow when I shoot an animal, and I kind of explained a bit of it earlier today. I waited 10, 15 minutes before I even thought about approaching the moose, because that's what I do. I don't want to have a moose that's dying as peaceful of as a death as it can, yet bumped out by my presence in the area. So we want it to die on its own in peace, hopefully, unless it's obviously wounded, and then we follow up and take care of that animal. But I waited my 10 minutes, 15 minutes by the clock, and walked up to the animal, made sure it was dead, and then I cut my tag. And the very next thing I thought about was, oh boy, this is a big animal and I've got to get the guts out, because out of respect to the animal's life, and to ensure that the meat is the highest quality meat that you have the ability to eat, you've got to take care of that animal. So thinking about getting the guts out, but it's a big job, and you basically need to have a helper to hold a leg up so that you can get at the gut cavity and get the guts out. I knew that was coming after dark, and I knew that we had seen lots of sign of predators in the area. So I wanted to try and help Mike find me, as well as deter any predators that might be interested in the moose. So I started a fire. I started a fire on the road right away, actually, before I went into the moose, to make sure that Mike could find me after I walked into the kill site. And I made that fire nice and big because I knew I wasn't going to be anywhere near it for a while. So I dumped a whole bunch of logs on it. And then at the kill site itself, I built a fire thinking, well, that might help Mike walk into me after he found my first fire. And then it's time to get down to business and get those guts out and take care of the animal as best we can. And so Mike and I started working on this problem, and very quickly it became evident that we both had different tactics that we wanted to employ to gut this animal out. And I learned something from you, Mike. You approach gutting the animal in a different way than I do, and I certainly learned from the way that you approach gutting an animal, and I really appreciate that. And so thanks for sharing with me.
Oh, no problem.
And we got the guts out, but then we had to make a decision. What were we going to do next?
It's dark, very dark, and getting late.
Yeah, we're tired, we're hungry, we're getting cold. So we pulled back a little bit of the hide, trying to help the moose get cooled down. And one of the things that my hunting mentor, Dylan, had taught me over the years was it's important to try and get the animal up off of the ground, because the ground's a great insulator. So we worked some logs underneath the animal, rolled the animal up onto the logs to allow for air to circulate underneath it. And we left and went back to make sure that those that were at camp that might have been worried about our well-being were aware that we'd shot a moose. We knew they would have already likely figured that out. There was one of two conclusions. We had a mechanical issue or we shot a moose. So we headed back towards camp to let our hunting party know that we'd had success, and I'll let you take it from there. We're driving down in your very capable 2-op ATV.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, we had to go through, this was the area that we were talking about earlier, that it was through 2 different activations. So, and several kilometers in on between even both activations is probably like 1.5 kilometers or so between each activation, plus there's still a few more kilometers in. So here we're going out with headlights and going through these deactivations and coming back, and we meet Paul and
Travis,
sorry. I'm so excited now.
The bearded giant, as I call him.
Yeah. So we meet them, and they're so happy. I mean, I think that's the first time I've ever gotten a big hug from Paul. He was so excited. But anyways, we got back, and I know they wanted to go in and get the moose, and I guess we sort of all together made a decision that it probably will have to leave it for the night. And one thing that, again, with the fire that Rob had built before we left, we really stoked it up, because we thought
there's a little something else that Rob.
Rob, yeah, that's right. He has this. He talked about me having a different technique of gutting the moose out, but I've never really heard about somebody taking their underwear off and putting it on the moose. This was supposed to be the deterrent.
I thought that's what everybody did.
But either way, you know what? Anything that possibly could help the predators from staying away would be successful. That's great.
Yeah, I actually rode behind Mike on his ATV Commando.
Oh no!
It was an exciting ride.
Well, but then of course we return to camp. Everybody has, gets rejuvenated, washes up. Where the excitement is now palpable between everybody. Get up early the next morning, and it's time to go in and get that bounty back and treat that meat very well, which we Thanks to Mike's ATV, we were able to get in there. He ferried everybody up to the actual carcass in, I don't know, it took about an hour and a half, I guess, to get everybody in there. It was very meaningful to me to bring Finn close and put a knife in his hand and let him do a little bit of skinning of the carcass.
Oh, he loved it.
Yeah.
He
But
loved
that
that.
was, I felt a deeply important experience for him to have on that first hunt like that.
When he still talks about it.
Oh, it's, and we did that. My memory of the moment was bending over, and in the first 10 seconds, as I'm just about to touch the animal, feeling something in my eye and getting bit by something right on my eyelid. So I ended up doing, the rest of the day with one eye.
You look like you got popped in the eye there.
That was really strange.
It
I don't know
slowed
what
it
that
up.
was, but we got them all quartered up. It worked very well. We one of our techniques that we will share is to take a rechargeable battery reciprocating saw in there with us, which made the quartering fantastic. In the end, when we got to the butcher a couple of days later, those 4 quarters were all within just like a couple of pounds of each other. So perfect quartering up. It worked well. We were able to load those quarters onto the machine to get it back to camp, then ferry them onto Travis's machine back, and then eventually up onto the game pole for them to age a couple of days before we went home. So it was good.
Yeah. I just wanted to speak to a couple of things, and I don't know if it's podcast worthy. Travis, you cut this out later if you don't want it in there, but
We'll cut that out.
Done. Yeah, forget that. I don't edit. What are you talking about? I don't edit these things.
Yeah. But that's the character. And 2 things that kind of came to mind as we're telling this story is how I felt. Mike, you spoke to it when we got back through the deactivations, and we saw both Travis and Paul at the last deactivation before camp, the furthest point that they could have got in relation to the downed animal. Both Paul and Travis were there, and they were concerned, right? There was some concern because you didn't know for sure, but Paul had put on his Bubba coveralls. He anticipated that there was a good chance that we shot an animal. But we got off the ATV, and Paul asked what had happened, and Mike said something along the lines like, Rob shot a moose. And Paul's reaction was so genuine and so joyous. I'll take that with me for the rest of my life. It was pretty special. It was just it was something else to behold. So there was like no holding back that joy that you experienced through other people being successful in the hunt, and I really appreciate that. And
no animosity, no nothing. That's the part of that's it's the group,
Yeah, no, and that was there. I mean, there was pure joy, pure emotion, and there was no hiding that.
I actually tried to get a picture of that joy and emotion, the anticipation of it in the camp. It didn't turn out well on camera.
Oh, yeah.
But and Paul's like, "Why are you taking my picture?" I'm like, "You got to see yourself, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't contain it."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah, when you heard it was arms up in the air, face turned up to the sky, and it was really special.
Yeah.
And then just character. So character for you, Travis, was like, I know that you had things that you needed to do, and we were talking the last day of your hunt, and the next day you had planned to leave. And there's a couple of times where Travis showed character on this trip, that stand out in my mind, and one was joining us on the hunt after we weren't successful on the group draw, and you knew that you had the opportunity to shoot like a spike fork moose, maybe, but low odds, and you still came out on the hunt with us because you committed to that hunt. And I certainly appreciate that. And I really appreciated the fact that you were willing to kind of stay around for as long as you could, even though you'd planned to leave earlier than that, and to help us with processing the animal and getting the animal out of the field. And when given those opportunities to test a person's character, and someone is willing to go the extra mile, stick around camp, to join the hunt when they have low odds of success, to pitch in and pull the animal out of the field, even though you're really supposed to be back at home or you've got other commitments, to me, like these two guys and Mike as well, they're guys that I would hunt with in the future, just by their actions. They've proven to be good hunting companions and folks with character that I just wanted to recognize.
Well, it's something that the woods will bring out in people, right? It's a good mirror of a person's character and ability, and it's a good time to for self-reflection. There's not much hiding when you spend a week or more together with a group of people in a hunting camp. Our flaws will become evident.
Speaking of not hiding, one of the pieces of equipment that Mike brought was a shower, a portable shower. What make is that? We'll give them a shameless plug here. Zodi. So Zodi makes a whole series of showers, from a little small one,
That's right,
right
Zodi.
up in, and Mike shows up with the looks like a big chrome fire extinguisher, which you heat up on the burners, and the thing actually has a thermometer on the side, and then, like I say, not hiding anything, watching Mike have his shower there.
It was awesome
with
though.
his Zodi, and using it to actually do the dishes and everything else to get pretty much almost immediate hot water on demand with that. That was an excellent piece of kit, and your praise. But watching him sitting out there is
Picked a perfect day
It's
for
not
it.
that kind
though.
of
that
podcast,
afternoon, it
is
was
it?
warm.
yeah.
So what do we talk about after the hunt? So the hunt's over. Everyone's packing up. I think I had now gone home.
Yes.
And you guys were going to hunt for a couple more days, save for the fact that the weather had turned.
The weather was starting to look like it was going to get nasty, and it was
Warmer.
actually getting warmer,
It was
which is
super
probably more than anything of a concern. And this beautiful animal that had given up its life for us is just not worth wasting. Cooling it down, getting it to the butcher, all this sort of took a priority at that point. So we packed her up. I guess it took us a half a day to get the tent and everything down. We went to the beautiful, let's not name that motel, partway back, and then had a nice meal, ate some fresh vegetables and stuff like that, which was good. Got up the next day and went to, and do we give a shout out to him, or does he want to keep it a secret?
Oh, I think he's. We'll keep it secret.
We'll keep it a secret. An excellent butcher in the Fraser Valley that did a fantastic job cutting the meat, made some fantastic sausage for us. Everybody got a good portion of meat. He was I think it was just shy of 400 pounds exactly on the hook when we got to the butcher. So, that's pretty good. That, he was a mature bull. He wasn't an old bull, but there was certainly an adequate amount to share amongst four guys, and beautiful quality meat. It's just been a treat every bite that we've had. I know at our house, that's the way we feel.
Oh, that's been fantastic.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And we didn't loosen an ounce of meat due to spoilage or anything else like that. The timing was good.
Yeah, it was interesting. So when we went to this unnamed butcher who works by word of mouth and isn't the busiest butcher in the Lower Mainland as a result, we saw some other moose hanging, and one moose in particular had a bit of a tinge to it, a bit of a green tinge to it, and it came down to it. He had to actually cut a bunch of meat off of the moose quarters, unfortunately, because those hunters weren't able to get the moose out of the field in time to ensure that it didn't spoil. And we're all about trying to do the best we can to take care of that meat after you pull the trigger. And as a result, the meat tastes that much better on the plate. And I don't know the circumstance of that particular moose and how it came to be that way. Sometimes it's almost inevitable, but in our case, I sure was grateful that we'd taken the decision to get out of the field as quickly as we could to get that moose out to the butcher.
I think you can plan a 10 or 12 or 14-day hunt, but if you do harvest early, you have to have that contingency plan. Either somebody's leaving early to go to the butcher, or you're going to collapse the camp, because if you're not doing anything respectful or ethical to waste meat by staying there longer.
No.
That's the gift. That is the gold or brass ring, when you do get something like that. But to try and be greedy to get more, it's very wasteful.
Yeah.
Well, freezer is the only option, really. You'd have to bring in a decent-sized freezer and start cooling the meat.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could almost do another podcast on just the logistics of some of the equipment that we take. And you do see in some hunting camps where people have a large chest freezer and they're running that off of their, they're running that off of their generator or whatever the case may be.
And we, in fact, had a chest freezer.
Yeah, which was actually more just though to keep our food in, or what we were going to consume. We were able to freeze the heart. We put some other parts in there, the grouse, and that was able to go in there for the return trip. And we have used that freezer in the past for things like freezing bear hides. Getting a bear early in a trip. It's easier than to try and salt the hide and everything else, just to roll it up and freeze it. That works good too.
But that was part of our plan. If we had to, we knew that we could stick a quarter into the freezer, get that quarter cooled down. We pull it out, hang it, put the next quarter in. Yeah. And there's a bit of a theme coming out in our conversation today, and that's planning. And I think it's important to have a good plan. And we were fortunate in our trip that kind of our Silvercore led us down a path of good planning from the get-go, and that plan included having a plan to take employ some tactics to take care of the meat.
Well, why don't we leave that to the listeners if they want to leave a comment, if they'd like to hear about how we plan for this from start to finish, what we would bring, and all the logistics about that, and we can do another podcast on that. But you would have to have listened through this whole podcast up until this point in order to reach that. But if they do like that, comment, let us know, and we will do that podcast. I guess as it's going on a little bit here, maybe we should look at after the hunt. Is there anything that you guys would do differently?
I think we should have brought one more vehicle.
I was pushing for that. I figured that from a contingency standpoint.
I would say, now, and we, for that, it had something happen that I think I would have liked to have done different. You got a flat tire, by the way, going up there. We can't forget that.
I did forget about that. That was on the trailer. It just ripped it.
Yeah, going in. So again, on another thought too, is just having that ability to get all of your gear out if there is that kind of an emergency. So between the vehicle that we traveled up on, which had Mike's machine in Mike's trailer, my machine on the back of my truck, we had the 8-foot box of my truck to transport, plus Mike's trailer, leaving with the meat at the end. We were pretty darn close to our maximum GVW, and that's and then with the amount of distance we had to travel on other than paved roads, that becomes an issue. So yeah, I would have said one more vehicle.
Or a larger trailer, really. If you had quite a bit of a longer trailer, bigger trailer, we would have more capability.
Susan, are you listening?
What comes to mind for me was communications. So as much as we planned our hunt, we planned to have communications tools with us. It's important when you're on these group draws you need to to have the ability to immediately communicate with your co-hunters, the people that have drawn the tag and share the hunt with you.
Ethically, legally, safety,
you
it's
must.
all there.
So in our circumstance, we had a combination of amateur radios. So Travis has his amateur radio license. I have my amateur radio license. So we had a combination of amateur radios and FRS radios, so the little family radios, and inReach devices. And from my experience, there's two things. That those amateur radios, by far, are a much better tool at communicating over long distances than those little FRS radios. The radio that I have has 20 times more power than a little FRS radio. So you are able to reach out and talk to someone and thus extend the distance you can effectively hunt in a group with those radios. The little inReach devices, you got to pay a monthly fee for them, but you can text each other with them, and they are the bee's knees. In fact, I think every hunter should have one of those things. They are something else. Satellite communication is the tool that everyone should have when they're out on these hunts. The two-way communication option of some of these devices is groundbreaking technology, and I encourage everyone to think about getting them.
How about you, Mike? Anything different?
Well, no, I would say I would like to add exactly. I when I went back, I started looking at these radios a little bit, and I did investigate the one that you had there, Rob, and I did find out exactly what you're saying is really everybody should have at least that level or better.
Yeah.
So that would be something. Other than just a slight modification in supply list, I can't think of anything. You kind of surprised us with this question to think about it, but nothing really comes to mind other than a few small things, supplies, and maybe the radios. And
yeah, the only thing I can think of would be 10-ply tires instead of 8-ply for me on the trailer, and I think that would have saved me from having to swap out the one that blew. Thankfully, I had dual axles on the back and no damage. That's the only thing I can think of. It was a really good group. It was a fantastic hunt. We got some great memories, not all of which we can share on a podcast, but it was, we got the shower memory, which I wasn't there for. That was kind of interesting.
That was worth every minute.
You missed out. Oh, yeah.
And I think, it was funny when we're talking about putting the underwear on the moose, I just get visions of, he hung the underwear on the antlers. So he didn't put the underwear on
the eating parts. Yeah, no.
But anyways.
They wouldn't fit. It was, I can't figure out why the underwear wouldn't fit on the moose.
But,
and of course, we got there. You weren't there. Your underwear's on the moose.
Oh, yeah.
We had
Who
to
gets to
touch
touch it?
your underwear to take it off the moose to start skinning it before you.
You got to employ the chopstick technique.
No, that's right.
Oh, that's good. Well, why don't we call it there? And if people want to hear about anything else on this, or if there's areas that they'd want expanded on, they'll let us know.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you, Travis, for putting this together.
Thank you very much, Travis.
And geez, it was nice being with you guys again under this kind of a circumstance. We were hoping to do this out in the bush, but I think it was a lot more comfortable to do it.
Definitely comfortable. Well, so that's a wrap up there. Can you give me one more moose call? But we'll do this one closer, and I'll put that like that, so you can be
on this one, or
no, on this one, and so we'll have the two pickups, but you can get close to it, so we'll see what happens.
You want a bull call?
Sure.
Yeah.